I talk live with my wonderful co-host Tammy from Singapore. Again, back to Singapore.
Hello.
Hi.
Yep.
Hi, Tammy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
How was L2L?
It was fabulous, and it was really good to see Brandon there as well. You were missed, of course. But we had a good time just reuniting with all of our emerging leader folks. So it was good. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. So from the forum of this show, we congratulate two new emerging leaders who have been selected this year and had been to L2L. And again, we got I think 40 more people this time.
No, it was a small class this year. I think 24.
24. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
24 more innovative educators and leaders from the education sector with us in the ASCD family. So today we are talking about innovative leadership. But before Tammy introduces you to the guest of today's show, is a wonderful educationist, a wonderful educator actually, and he has a lot of ideas. Let me tell you one thing, that I Talk Live is a collaborative project of Pakistani ASCD and ELASCD, and we try to bring the best voices from the world to share their experiences, ideas with us, with our audience, and we want to grow as a family of educators. So once again, we are with the show, and apologies for being missing out for a couple of weeks. A problem was on my side, and I kept pushing Tammy to postpone the shows, but we are back now. Sorry. So Tammy, who is with us today?
We are very happy to have Brandon Johnson with us, who is a 2017 Emerging Leader. I mentioned we saw each other last week at the conference in the DC area, which was awesome. So welcome, Brandon, to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm just going to introduce a little bit about you before we dive into talking about innovative leadership, which I'm super excited to talk about.
Okay.
So just a bit about Brandon. He's a principal at a high school in Mansfield, Texas. And as I mentioned, he's a 2017 Emerging Leader. And obviously, he is someone who brings an innovative approach to leadership to his school, which was one of the pieces of the L2L conference this past week. He got dug into that a bit for us. His aim is to guide teachers and leaders and students to find their passion using design thinking and collaboration, and prepare students for the world by developing their life-ready skills. Brandon is also a top 25 STEAM educator to follow on Twitter, and is recognized as a distinguished administrator by the Texas Music Educators Association. So again, someone who's been sitting around twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing in education. Or not. So welcome, Brandon. We're excited to talk about innovative leadership through the whole child approach with you, and all sorts of things. So thanks for coming on the show. And I'm going to just start asking you questions right away, because we have a lot to talk about.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah. So I was looking through your blog too the other day, and there's a lot of articles to read, so I'm going to go back to that this week. But some of most of your writing is about this idea around innovative leadership. So can you kind of define what that means to you and what it looks like in your school?
So to me, innovative leadership is it's bringing a different view to things that have we've always faced. And so the way that I lead is I ask questions, and those questions are based around what are we doing, why are we doing it, does it stand the test of time, should there be a better way of doing it, and how might we tweak this experience to make it even better for our students and our teachers and our parents. And so the way that I really define it, in simplest terms, is it's trying to think differently and approach problems differently.
Great.
Go ahead, Umair. Of course, I was going to say something else, but I'll refrain. I'll wait.
No, you can.
No, it's okay. I always take over. You go for it.
Okay, so Brandon, this word leadership got a lot of buzz in last 1 or 2 decades, and people started thinking more about it. So today our topic is innovative leadership. You know what? I'm more interested about knowing how non-innovative leadership looks like. Why we need innovative leadership?
Yeah. So the word non-innovative leadership, it kind of has seems like it has a bad name. I would call it more traditional leadership instead of
Okay.
non-innovative leadership. And there's a place and there's a time for everything. You know, if you're trying to turn a culture around, I would think that you're going to have to live in different worlds and need to bounce back and forth between when to be innovative and approach things differently with different ways of thinking. But then also you've got to stick to tradition because sometimes when you're in that type of turnaround culture or turnaround school, there's a little bit of management and organizational strategic management and leadership that you have to employ. And so to me, when you look at innovative leadership versus traditional leadership, it's really making sure that you apply the right stimulus at the right time. And so there's, like I said, there's a time to be innovative, and then there's a time just to do the nuts and bolts and make sure that you do the nuts and bolts really well. For instance, you know, you can focus on needing to create a new schedule because of an assembly or something that's going to happen, and you can do it in an innovative way, and you find that you could spend hours trying to develop this new schedule when really the old schedule was fine. And the old schedule just needed some tweaks. And so on my campus, we have a funny saying: we do complex we do complex really well. We do simple really hard. And so, you know, we might find ourselves at the whiteboard trying to work through a solution to an issue. And the easiest solution was the first one that we came up with. And we said, no, there's no way we can do that. That's too easy. It's too simple. And sometimes that's the best thing we could do.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. That's great. So let's call it traditional leadership versus innovative leadership. So, Brendan, what made you decide that you needed to work in this area of leadership?
Well, for me, I wanted to have a different experience in education, and it started with my personal feelings towards education, and then it went into, well, what was the kind of school that I wanted to be a part of, and what things that I enjoy about school, and how do I create those things in the schools that I work, and then from there, I started to rise up different levels and promote and have a greater impact and greater say of how students were going to experience school. And then I just really landed on the fact that I want to create a passion, spark a passion within students to come to school every day and learn. And to me, that it doesn't have to be walk through the doors and move straight into compliance and do what we tell you to do. You know, I want students to be free spirits, free thinkers. I want them to challenge the status quo and question why we're doing what we're doing. And I think it's our job to engage them. And so I just noticed that when I looked around, that wasn't being done by that idea wasn't being pushed forward by a lot of the leaders that I was around, and so I wanted to change that when I moved into leadership.
Awesome. So, just thinking about something that you mentioned, that you want your students to be free thinkers, and just kind of have this open approach to school, or that's different from how we kind of grew up, right? And so,
Mhm.
how do the students not feel about it, but how do they get comfortable with doing that? Because I'm guessing that maybe there are some teachers in your school who are still kind of in that traditional lane, maybe not. So how do you kind of, and I know it requires a lot of work and thinking here, but like how do how do you get the students there so that they are comfortable to like openly problem solve and talk about things?
Well, to start out, I think that when you give students a voice, you better watch out because they're going to use it. And so one of the things that I realized is the more consistently you give them a voice, the faster things take a hold. And so the issue is not really the students. The issue is making sure that your vision as a leader is being carried forward by your teachers, and your teachers understand what you believe in. And so one of the things that I do when I hire teachers is I talk to them about our beliefs, and I say, we're hiring you and we're so excited for you to join our team. And all that we ask you to do is walk your beliefs, because we know that there's going to be times where you're going to make mistakes. But when we make mistakes and we're trying to walk our beliefs, we don't veer too far away from what we believe and what we want to do for kids. And so when teachers know that I want students to have a voice, then in their classroom, they try to look for ways to give students a voice. And so once students have that voice, like I said, you better watch out because it's not uncommon for students to catch you in the hallway and say, well, I don't understand why we do this. And I don't really think that's a good decision. I don't like that. And then they tell you exactly why they don't like it. And you're just like, whoa, maybe it wasn't a great decision because, this kid just put together this really well articulated argument about why we shouldn't be doing something that I thought was a pretty good idea to do. And it makes you rethink some things. But it starts with the students having an opportunity to consistently use their voice. And then when they see their voice being listened to, and they see actions being taken from leadership and teachers, and things are implemented, then they really develop ownership. And once they develop ownership, you're really starting to get a cadence of how you do things as a leader and as a school.
So that just kind of made me think about, like I was just looking at one of the questions that I wrote, and I wrote it kind of in reverse order, actually, because what it sounds like is that the kids it's not top down. It's really coming from, and I hate to say bottom up, from student, teacher, admin, because they're really taking ownership of, what's going on in the school. So when that's happening, how are teachers reacting? Because you're kind of expecting it because that's the culture of the school that you've desired, you want to have. And so how are teachers, how are they, handling it, I guess, when the kids speak up more?
Well, it's a struggle, and the number one reason why it's a struggle is because one of my favorite things to say is people don't fear change; they fear change that's unsupported. And so we have to, as leaders, make sure that we're constantly trying to support teachers through this change process. And what we do is meet them where they are, let them do some things at their own time. So if I'm doing walkthroughs and I notice that it's a really teacher-centered classroom and students don't have much of a voice, then my feedback to the teacher is, hey, it was really great coming into your class today. I saw some really great instruction. One thing you might consider is how to solicit student input in your lessons and in your activities. And then that leads to a conversation of, well, what does soliciting student input look like? And then we go down the path of sometimes giving them choice menus and letting them have a choice of what they participate in. Sometimes it means giving them the option of the location in which they complete assignments and how they complete assignments. For instance, sitting in the desk versus standing up, working problems on the board versus turning the working problems into a competition, things like that. And so once we have those conversations, then the question is, hey, let's go try that and let's see how that goes. And I'd love to follow up with you about the process of implementation and how I can support you. And so meeting teachers where they are in the process of this change is extremely important. And then also realizing that there's, just like I said earlier, there's a time and a place, and there's going to be times where teachers aren't going to have that student input, and there's a very valid reason why they don't have that student input, and giving them space to be able to know when. One of the books that I recently read, which was recommended by a friend of mine, was Daniel Pink, When. And when is such an important thing when you're thinking of implementing new ideas and concepts and trying to be innovative in your approach. Because if you get the when wrong, then things aren't going to take hold.
Chris.
Yeah, that's a really important point.
Okay, so Brandon, here comes a question.
Okay.
Tell us about leadership. Like, is it more about troubleshooting or taking preemptive measures to avoid troubleshooting? I mean, yeah, we know there are complete templates and ways to emerge as a wonderful leader. But my question is it about when you get a trouble and you start troubleshooting, or you start taking measures well before that trouble emerges? And if it is the second thing, taking the preemptive measures against troubleshooting, then how to shift the paradigm? Because mostly it's when we think about the school managers and the heads who are working there, we actually see most of them are doing the troubleshooting. So how they can shift the paradigm?
Well, to be honest with you, when I'm at my worst, I'm not shifting the paradigm, and I find myself utilizing the tool that I like most, which is the hammer. I see everything as a nail, and I want to solve every problem. And every time someone comes to me with something, I'm like, yes, I can't wait.
Yep.
It's a problem I can solve. And so when I'm at my worst, I'm doing that, and I try to safeguard against that by backing up. And so when I'm at my best, I'm able to back up and ask myself, okay, first of all, is this a problem that I should be dealing with? Am I here as a thought partner? Am I here as a problem solver? And so when I notice that when I work alongside teachers and staff and students as thought partners, then I really allow them to be the problem solvers and the troubleshooters. And so for me, I have kind of, you count to 10 and you calm yourself. Well, for me, I listen, and the first thing I ask myself, okay, is this a problem that I need to solve? Number two, do they even want me to solve this problem? Because sometimes they don't want you to solve the problem. And then I began a process of questioning. And when I start questioning them and asking them, what is it that we can really drill down to that is the root of the problem, and what are some possible solutions to the problem? Most of the time, they come up with those things on their own. And so I see leaders as facilitators of thought and problem solving, and not pushers of solving other people's problems. So, I will tell you, on Monday and Tuesday of this week, Monday we were off, but on Tuesday, I was not very good. And I was like, yes, I'm back in the office. Let me solve some problems. I need to feel needed. I need to feel needed. And then the rest of the week, I realized, last week things went on without me, and they did a fantastic job. And that's what happens when you empower people to make decisions and solve problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Before you ask your next one thing I wanted to mention, Umair, of course, when you were talking about how you kind of go through this process with teachers, you've got to figure out, do they need help solving the problem or not? And then you mentioned going through a series of questions, which would be, a principal as a coach, which is something that's also very innovative, because that doesn't happen a lot either. And I think that's one of those pieces that is missing in a lot of schools, where a principal may have a hard time just kind of figuring out what the role as a principal is, because there are so many things that need to be done. But that's one of those pieces that I value, really, is that in that coaching role, because then you're seen as a peer and not as like administrator and then teacher, which you are. But when you flip it to that coaching role, it feels more like instructional partners, which is something that I value. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things about being a coaching leader, you have to create the conditions for coaching. Teachers have to feel like it's safe, and that's where the win comes in. So knowing when to push, when to back off, knowing where each one of your teachers is at any given time, and making sure that you're approaching them in the right way that they need to be approached. So for me, the coach piece that's all I know. I'm a former coach, former athlete, former coach, and I think one of my biggest areas of growth is to look at strengths versus deficits. And so I'm constantly being introspective to look at how I can improve my weaknesses and try to turn them into strengths. And so because of that, when I coach, one of the interesting things that typically happens is at first the questions feel like a little bit of an interrogation, but really what it is it's asking them things like, for instance, a teacher says, well, I'm having issues with getting my students to engage in discussion. What ideas do you have from that? And so the first thing I ask myself is, okay, she's asking me about ideas. I've got to be careful as a leader to make sure that the ideas that I give her, she doesn't just take those and then try to implement those just because I gave her the idea. And so I tell teachers right off the bat, hey, here's some ideas, take or leave it. If I never see these things happen in your classroom, it's totally fine, but this is just kind of an aid. And so, I ask, what does discussion look like? And then once they answer that question, okay, what would you like discussion to look like? Do you see pockets of time where students are able to engage in discussion at the level that you want them to engage in? And then from there, based off their answer, I might ask them, okay, so what do you think are some steps that you can take to begin to get the students who are engaging the way you want them to engage? How do you get them to give others permission to engage further? And basically, how do you start a movement is the question, really. And it's kind of like the guy in the video dancing. The more students that begin to engage in the discussion, in essence, give permission to the kids that aren't engaging in the discussion, and then they realize that it's a safe and it's a cool place and it's an appropriate thing to do, and kids begin to do that. And so through a series of questions, we get down to the root of what it is that they need support on. And really, I'm just asking them, what do you think are some ideas, and trying to pull that out of them, just like a writing coach, is going to pull those things out of their students. So.
Okay, so actually, Tammy, there's a train passing by near you. Like, yeah. I had to hear throughout the answer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to say anything else. You are perfect now. You are okay. So, Brendan, I
was wondering what that noise was. Okay.
So, Brendan, I have a question. We do write questions before the show. And these certain questions that suddenly come into our minds that actually are important too. So my question is, like when we appoint a leader in a school, the traditional name is still there. The principal, the headmaster, or the coordinator, like these official positions. But now you are a leader. So when you are sitting at the leadership position, you have to follow certain directions and policies by the government, by your state, and so there is a complete frame of work that is given to you. So let's metaphorically talking about a situation that you are now the principal and you have built an environment as per your leadership skills in the school, and there is a policy coming down as well, and there is a clash between two situations. What would you prefer? You will go for the policy, or you will go to save that thing, that environment that you have built over the years in a school?
That's a really tough one. We face that a lot, and let me just kind of tell you a little story about what my week was like this week. I surveyed teachers and I asked them how they were feeling and what their perceptions of work was, and then the interesting thing that came back was the majority of teachers are really overwhelmed by what we're asking educators to do. So it really has very little to do with what's going on my campus, but it has to do with those state and government policies that you talk about and all of the expectations that we have for teachers in the United States. And so we continue to ask them to do more, but on the flip side of it, we're not taking much off of their plate. And so with that kind of being the theme, I think the most appropriate thing to do is understand, have empathy for their situation. But I think as leaders, sometimes we have to make the tough decision and decide what we're not going to do and not do those things for a really good reason. So, we're gonna follow the policy in order to make sure that we're in compliance with the law, the state and the federal laws. But I heard it when I was at Empower. Somebody said. I think it was, I forget who it was, but someone said, sometimes the best way to shield teachers is to look at things from a minimal compliance standpoint. So we're going to be compliant, but we're going to be minimally compliant so that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But I also save my teachers so that they can actually be their best for kids. And so that's something I've been reflecting on. And this week in particular, the things that we've talked about from a teacher standpoint is, as I've gotten that feedback about what they're struggling with in the paperwork side of things, I'm asking myself, okay, what do we have to do in order to be compliant? And then also, what are we doing that we could stop doing to give teachers more time? And then will that actually lead to a change in things? And so for me, I think the good leaders are going to shield their staff. And it doesn't mean that they keep them in the dark, but they're going to shield them away from some of the compliance efforts and some of the new initiatives. And as we shield our staffs, I think it's important that we educate them so that they know what's going on and that they know what they're being shielded against so that we can preserve and protect our culture. So that's kind of how I approach it. I make sure my teachers are in the know. And then from there, I let them know, okay, here's how we're going to approach this problem. And then I put it out for feedback. If they have ideas on how we can accomplish this initiative and how we can fold it into what we're already doing, then we definitely want to do that. But it starts with them knowing what the initiative is or what the policy is, and then helping me determine how we're going to approach that and stay true to our culture.
That's great. That's great. We have one more question, and Tammy, I think if you have any question, you can ask after me. Yeah, you can think innovative. Meanwhile, so Brendan, when we talk about teacher leadership, which is a very essential part in schools, and many take it in literal meaning, like a teacher that leads in the true context of teacher leadership. How you look at it? Is that like preaching others, telling others how to do, training others, or how the teacher leadership looks like actually on ground?
So to me, teacher leadership looks like being involved in what you're passionate about. And so what I say is, if you're not passionate about something and you're indifferent, don't step up and don't talk, because you're going to drown out the people who are really passionate about whatever it is that you're doing. So stand up and get involved for what you're passionate about. If you're not passionate about it, just back off. And so as teachers on my campus and other campuses that I've been on, as they come up with ideas, I think leadership means letting them process those ideas, let them expand on those ideas, and let them go lead those ideas. And so it could be something as simple as wanting to start a new club, making a tweak to the schedule, doing student recognition a little bit of a different way. These are all things that teachers have brought to me, in the past, and I've said, "Hey, that's a really great idea. Why don't you lead that?" And they say, "Well, what does that mean?" And I said, "Well, that means that I'm going to work with you, and you're going to send out the email, and you're going to be the captain and the lead when it comes to making this happen on our campus. And they're like, well, but I can't tell assistant principals what to do. I can't tell people what to do. And I say, I give you permission to do that, because your passion in this area is going to lead our campus to a level that we've never been at. And so we need you to step up, and we need you to fill that gap, and we need you to develop the processes and lead the charge in this area. And so sometimes it means stepping up and truly taking the lead on an initiative. Sometimes it means being an influencer when leadership, myself, my administrators, and my counselors, when we have ideas, we take it to our teacher leaders and we ask their opinion. And we say, if an idea is good enough, then it will resonate with other people. And so as we take these ideas to them and we find that they're viable, it could be giving us advice about how we should implement those ideas. It should be keeping us away from some landmines that might be possible as we look at implementing an idea. And so it can look very different, but it really means, I would boil it down to this: giving them and growing their capacity, giving them a voice, and giving them the opportunity to develop in ways that they wouldn't normally be able to develop.
Great. Tammy, you have any questions?
Well, of course, but we're already getting to our 30-minute mark, and I probably should head home because it's nearing midnight. So, Brent, do you have any? I jotted down the book "When" by Daniel Pink. Do you have any other recently read books that you would recommend, or something that sticks out in your mind that we can add to our Facebook page?
Yes. So there's two other books that I would recommend. One is The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, I believe. And then another one is The Four Disciplines of Execution, which is written by Chris McChesney. And I will tell you, the Culture Code really kind of causes you to reflect as a leader and how you're developing your culture intentionally, and gives you some action steps to take. And then The Four Disciplines of Execution, for me, that's how we take these ideas that we have, these innovative ideas that either I have as a leader, or that my admin team or my teachers have, or my students have, and that's how we make them happen, and follow up and make sure that what we do at a high level. And so that's what Four Disciplines of Execution does.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I would like to say too that to our viewers, if you get a chance to go to Empower 20 in LA next year, Brandon will be presenting on teacher leadership. So if you can make it out of your school to go to that, it would be well worth it. So we'll post those book recommendations on our Facebook and YouTube pages. I will also put your Twitter handle there so that people can follow you on Twitter as well. And I just want to thank you for joining us today, Brennan. It was a great conversation.
And before we leave, Tammy, we got one question from a viewer.
Okay.
Quick question. Quick answer, Brandon.
Okay. How to be innovative and deal with parents, parent reservation. I'm not sure what the parent reservation means. I think it might mean difficult parents. And so what we do is, on my campus, we send out a weekly parent newsletter, and we try to make sure that we consistently communicate with our parents. And so my parents know that transparency is important to me, and that if there's something that they need to know, then I'm going to make sure that I send it out and everybody is aware. And so the more transparent you are with your parents, I think the less likely they are to have issues when there is a problem. And so typically for me, I tell parents, if we make a mistake, we're gonna own it, and we're gonna do our best to make it right. And we really work to try to create a positive parent experience.
That's great. That's great. So thank you
Thank
very much for your time. And before we leave, I would like to tell the viewers that we have a YouTube channel as well. You can watch our previous shows, and this show will be uploaded in a while on our YouTube channel as well. Do share with your colleagues, with your staff, with your schools, with the people who really want to know about education and how the education really works on ground. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brandon and
Thanks,
Tammy.
Brandon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Good to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Have a good
Take care.
day.
All right. You
Nice
too.
day.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.